I never imagined that my life would take such an unexpected turn. 3 years ago, everything seemed set. I had a solid marriage, a stable career, and a clear path ahead. Now, all of that is just a distant memory, a reminder of how quickly life can change. When I ran into my ex-wife again recently, I was taken aback by her tears. I couldn't even tell how I felt, whether I was proud of how far I'd come or heartbroken by everything I had lost. To understand that moment, I need to take you back to where it all began. My name is Brandon, and the story starts with Catherine. We met at the gym where she worked at the front desk. I'd been going there for a while, and although she was always friendly, we never really spoke until one day we did. I couldn't tell you how the conversation started, but once it did, it just seemed to flow. There was something about her that made me look forward to our chats. Soon enough, I was hoping she'd be there whenever I walked in. Our connection grew quickly, and before long we were dating. A little over a year later, I thought I knew everything about her. We spent weekends together, took long drives, and cooked meals together. I thought I had found someone I could build a future with, so I proposed. She said yes, and we got married. At that time, everything felt perfect. I had a stable job as a back-end engineer at Airbnb, a good salary, and we lived comfortably. Catherine was still working at the gym, but I knew she had the potential to do so much more. So, I encouraged her to quit her job and consider freelancing. I was willing to help her learn the skills she needed, and we had the financial cushion to take the risk. We talked about our future together, maybe even kids. But then the pandemic hit. The world went into lockdown, and Airbnb was no exception. I was laid off without much explanation, and everything changed. I tried to stay optimistic and threw myself into side projects, hoping something would take off. But the income wasn't the same, and soon, we had to face the reality of the situation. I sat down with Catherine and explained that we needed to cut back on our spending. I told her that things couldn't continue as they had been, and we both had to adjust. I thought she'd understand, but I was wrong. Something shifted in Catherine after that. The warmth between us disappeared. The small disagreements that we used to brush off turned into full-blown arguments. Everything seemed to trigger tension, and she began to treat me as if I were a burden. She accused me of being lazy and not trying hard enough, even though I was doing everything I could. I didn't recognize the woman in front of me anymore. She wasn't just stressed, she seemed to resent me. The more I tried to fix things, the worse they became. Eventually, she told me she needed to visit her parents. I thought that maybe some time apart would help her clear her head and give us a chance to regroup. But when she left, things grew silent. She barely replied to my messages, and when she did, it was short and cold. Calls were ignored or ended abruptly. Weeks passed, then months. Finally, I asked when she would be coming back. Her response was blunt: "I'm only coming to pick up my things. I've decided to end the marriage." I was blindsided. Yes, we were struggling, but I never expected divorce to come so suddenly and without any real discussion. She didn't want to talk about it, nor did she want to divide our assets. She just wanted a cash settlement to avoid the hassle of a long legal process. I was so drained emotionally that I agreed, and we worked out an amount. That was it. When she came to collect her belongings, she barely acknowledged me. No words, no eye contact, just packed up her things and left. I stood there in the apartment that we had once shared, feeling completely shattered. The aftermath was one of the darkest periods of my life. I lost myself in the pain. Some days I didn't want to keep going. I thought about ending it all more than once. The only thing that stopped me were a few close friends who wouldn't give up on me. They showed up for me when I couldn't do it myself, feeding me, sitting with me, and reminding me that I wasn't alone. They helped me get through the darkest times, and for that I'll always be grateful. There was a time when everything seemed like it was crumbling around me. I had nothing left but the weight of my failure. The end of my marriage broke me in ways I didn't think possible, but in that darkness, something changed. It forced me to confront a truth I didn't want to accept. She was gone. If I wanted to survive, I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. So that's exactly what I did. I buried myself in work, focusing on my side projects like they were the only thing that mattered. Coding became my therapy. I'd wake up early, work all day, read, build, test, fail, and then start over. It wasn't about where it was going, it was about not staying down. If life knocked me flat, I wasn't going to stay down. I was going to rise. At times, I'd find myself feeling lost, thinking about the distance between where I was and where I wanted to be. Most months, I struggled just to make ends meet, nowhere near six figures, not even close. But the grind was the point. It was no longer about just chasing success. I needed proof that I wasn't finished, that I hadn't peaked just because my marriage had fallen apart. 2 years passed slowly, a quiet hustle, steady progress. Then, something incredible happened. One of the features I'd created for an AI tool started gaining traction. It began with a few small businesses reaching out to try it, but soon enough, word spread, and before I knew it, I was getting calls from bigger companies, the kind I used to dream of working with. I figured it was just a fluke, but the emails kept coming, and that's when I realized I had built something with real value. Then, out of nowhere, came an email that changed everything. A major tech company, one I had admired for years, was interested in acquiring my startup. I sat staring at that email for what felt like hours. I called my team to discuss it, and when we saw the offer, we were floored. This wasn't just life-changing money, it was generational wealth. We unanimously decided to accept the deal, but it didn't end there. They also offered me a long-term partnership role. I wasn't just cashing out and walking away, I was stepping into a new chapter, joining a company I'd always respected. That night, after everything was finalized, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on the journey. There were no celebrations, no parties, just quiet realization. It had been years since Catherine left, and I hadn't heard from her in ages. But one day while grabbing coffee, I ran into Tom, an old friend. We caught up, and then out of nowhere he mentioned Catherine. I'd always thought she went to stay with her parents after the divorce, but Tom revealed that, during the lockdown, she had been living with someone else. Some engineer she'd been seeing while we were still married. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been living a double life and I never even knew. Despite the pain, I refused to let it drag me back into that dark place. I had come too far. A few months later, the company that acquired us invited me to speak at their annual corporate gala. Since I was now a partner, I was given the stage. That night, I looked in the mirror, seeing someone I hadn't recognized in years. Someone proud, strong. When I walked on stage, I was calm and composed. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, Catherine. She was sitting at one of the tables, dressed in a stunning emerald gown. She looked just like I remembered, poised and elegant. I found out later she had come as someone's guest, but in that moment, seeing her there, it shifted everything inside me. I had a speech prepared, but I didn't use it. Instead, I spoke from the heart. I talked about patience, about how we often need to lose everything before we find what we truly need. I spoke about pain and how it can shape us if we allow it to. To the audience of executives and partners, it sounded like a corporate growth strategy. But every word, every sentence was meant for her. When I finished, I saw her wiping tears from her eyes. I didn't know if it was the words themselves or something else, but I knew she understood. After the event, I mingled, shook hands and smiled, but I noticed she kept watching me. It was like she was waiting for a chance to speak, but it never came. I was too busy, too surrounded. A week later, I received a text from an unknown number. It was short, just asking if we could meet. I didn't need to see the name to know who it was. I stared at the message for a while before leaving it unread. Eventually, I blocked the number. It didn't matter. That chapter of my life was over. I had moved on, built something better. Looking back, I've learned so much about people, life, and myself. Patience is powerful. When everything fell apart, I was terrified. I didn't know how long it would take to heal, but rushing through it would have destroyed everything. Rebuilding took time. There were sleepless nights and days where I felt empty, but I kept going, focusing on what I could control. Eventually, the pieces started falling into place, but there were times I almost gave up. If I had, none of this would have happened. No AI project, no deal, no speech. That's why I want to say this to anyone out there struggling. Please don't give up. You never know what the future holds if you just hang on a little longer. Pain doesn't have to just sit there. It can fuel you, shape you into someone stronger. I didn't do all this to get revenge or to prove anything to anyone. I did it because I refused to let my pain go to waste. So, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have blocked her? Would you have answered? Would you have taken her back? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I want to know. This isn't just my story, so many people go through this kind of thing in different ways. If this story resonated with you, made you think, or helped you feel seen, give it a like and share it. It helps more than you know. Thanks for listening and take care of yourself.